your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us. Alberta Justice Minister Casey Madhu has been relieved of his duties over a call he made to Edmonton's Police Chief Dale McPhee about a $300 distracted driving ticket. Premier Jason Kenney says he's asked Madhu to step aside while an independent investigator examines the facts of the case to determine whether Madhu interfered in the administration of justice. In a statement, Casey Madhu had this to say, quote, "To be clear, at no point did I request that the ticket be rescinded. I would never do that. However, in that particular call, I regret raising the issue at all with the Chief McPhee. I paid the ticket fully and promptly." Madhu, who is Nigerian-born, says he called the chief after he received the ticket, but only to seek assurances that he was not being racially profiled or singled out for surveillance, given his political position. He says he now understands why people have concerns about the call itself. Energy Minister Sonia Savage will assume Madhu's duties in the meantime. The Alberta NDP justice critic spoke about this to the media on Tuesday. MLA Irfan Sabir says Casey Madhu needs to resign.
Casey Madhu must resign. He cannot be on leave of absence or a paid vacation. He cannot sit in cabinet without portfolio. And stepping back is not the same as stepping down. He must resign. Let's remember the facts of this matter. The Attorney General received a ticket for distracted driving in a school zone last March. He chose to engage with senior law enforcement, the Chief of Police, regarding the penalty levied against him. He called him directly. Madhu used his position as Attorney General to initiate this conversation with the Chief of Police. And regardless of whether he asked the chief to cancel the ticket or not, it is political interference to make that call.
Our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent with the National Post, Tyler Dawson, joined us this week from Edmonton to discuss what was behind that call to Edmonton's police chief if Casey Madhu says he didn't call to talk about the ticket.
Well, it's a great question. And the reason that Madhu gave was that he'd phoned regarding concerns about racial profiling and also concerns that perhaps he was being watched in a similar fashion to Shannon Phillips, the Lethbridge NDP MLA, who's had this sort of long-running conflict with the Lethbridge Police Service. But as you say, he claims that he didn't ask to have the ticket dismissed, and I believe the CBC had spoken to Chief McPhee, who had confirmed that. But of course, huge drama resulting of this because he is the Justice Minister. Therefore, he's sort of, the top lawman, in the province, phoning about to discuss a ticket that he got.
You can catch more of that interview with Tyler Dawson coming up later on in the show. Meanwhile, Drew Barnes, MLA for Medicine Hat Cypress, also joined Hal Roberts for Medicine Hat to discuss why he has a problem with the Casey Madhu incident, even though Madhu says the call to the chief was not about the distracted driving ticket.
You see this as a severe conflict of interest?
Yeah, it's even worse. Time-honored Westminster parliamentary tradition that you do not interfere with a constituent's legal ongoings, never mind your own. And, clearly, that line was crossed. And for that reason, trust has been lost in the minister. Trust has been lost in the premier and the Kenney government again. And for that reason, I believe that Minister Madhu should be removed from cabinet.
Now, Premier Kenney has called for an investigation into the matter. Is there any way back from this for MLA Madhu?
It's absolutely clear, Hal. The Edmonton police chief said that the Minister Madhu called him. The minister admitted that he called him within minutes of getting the ticket. So what's left to investigate? A time-honored parliamentary tradition was broken, and the price for that, the repercussions are to lose your position.
In other news, Alberta's top court upheld the sentence of a man who killed a Calgary Stampeders football player outside of a nightclub in 2016. 3 appeal court justices unanimously dismissed the challenge from Nelson Lagilla, who was found guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Mylan Hicks. Lagilla was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 18 years for shooting Hicks over a spilled drink. Up next, the government of Alberta considering replacing RCMP with an independent provincial police force, but at what cost? That's after the break. Welcome back. The government of Alberta is giving serious consideration to replacing the RCMP with an independent Alberta Provincial Police Service, with a potential transition beginning in the year 2025. A report by PricewaterhouseCoopers outlines that the transition would cost $366 million. Last year, the provincial government began shifting the cost of policing to municipalities, including Lethbridge County. But the county's position is that Alberta municipalities have not been adequately consulted on this matter. Lethbridge County Reeve Tori Campbell joined me earlier this week to discuss. What are your main concerns about shifting from RCMP to a provincial police force? Is it mainly cost?
I think, yeah, definitely. Cost is obviously a paramount concern to the county. We have a very limited amount of resources to work with, and any further strain on that has to go towards policing is obviously of great concern. We're happy with the current arrangement that we have with the RCMP. We fully acknowledge that there's work to be done to improve that relationship and to increase that level of service within the county. But at the same time, we feel that we can work within that current relationship, build and strengthen that, and come out in a favorable position.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about your local detachment of RCMP. You must have a great relationship with them. What are their thoughts and feelings on this? Are they neutral about it? Are they happy? Are they upset? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so when we travel to Edmonton for our RMA convention, we have the opportunity to meet with K Division and talk with some higher ranking officials there within the RCMP. And we've relayed to them and will continue to that we appreciate the support that we receive. We appreciate the relationship. And what they've communicated to us is that they're very much engaged in working with us. There's been no indication from anyone on the RCMP side of the table that they want to move away from policing. I know that's kind of been bantied about a bit.
Mm-hmm. Is there any talk on what will happen to the current RCMP? Will they just have to move elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean that's so many huge unknowns. I know that when we've talked to provincial ministers, there's been a suggestion that maybe that if there were to be a transition to a provincial police service, that some of those members here in Alberta could be absorbed into that provincial police service. Obviously, there would have to be a large number of them move over just to fill those vacancies on the provincial police service side. As with many things in this issue, a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah, so many unknowns, absolutely. So let's talk dollars and cents. So how much was Lethbridge County asked to contribute to this provincial police force?
Well, at this point in time, that's, I think, our biggest concern is that through the PricewaterhouseCoopers report, costing is one of the more glaring absences in that. There is that $366 million potential transitional cost that you mentioned, but after that, it really doesn't spell out what the ongoing costs will be, and additionally what that would mean to municipalities. I know the Premier has stated that he doesn't intend to download any further policing costs to municipalities. But without some concrete evidence to back that up, we just don't feel comfortable moving forward at this time.
Yeah, totally. And I believe I read somewhere in that report that last year the county was asked to contribute, was it $350,000? And then it's going to rise again in this next coming year to $469,000. Is that correct?
That's correct. With the information that we currently hold, from that baseline where we started to looking out into the coming years, creeping up on that $700,000 a year figure would be our contribution from the municipality to the provincial government to offset that cost of policing in our municipality.
If this financial burden is put on the county for a provincial police force year after year, what is this taking money out of? So what are the citizens of the county going to be missing out on as a result?
The fact of the matter is we continue to be downloaded upon. And that just means that, as you said, we're trying to be creative. We are being creative. We're trying to stretch that dollar as far as we can, but there comes a point where we just can't keep up anymore.
After the break, we speak with a union representing hundreds of unvaccinated healthcare workers who have been forced to take unpaid leave during a pandemic, only to be called back again because of staffing shortages. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. After putting healthcare workers on unpaid leave for refusal to get vaccinated, the provincial government asked many of them to turn around and come back to work because of staff shortages, regardless of their vaccination status. The Alberta Union of Provincial Employees represents approximately 700 of these workers and says this is a contradiction of policy. Take a look. We've also been hearing that Alberta Health Services was calling back unvaccinated workers because of a shortage in staff, mainly due to COVID and the vaccine mandates. So they're calling them back to work even if they're unvaccinated once they already made the policy that you have to be vaccinated. So doesn't this, in a sense, kind of contradict the whole mandate to begin with? What's the union's stance on all of that?
It's one of those catch-22s because they've, on one side they've said, well, you're a health and safety risk and we've had to implement this policy. But what they have done is it's not just they're calling them back. There is conditions to that, which is the testing phase that they have to provide tests to prove that they are still COVID free, for example. And of course, we are going to again defend that. And if it goes to a further level, I mean, we will definitely be calling on, that contradictory nature of what they're doing. And at the end of the day, again, AHS was ordered to do this by the government of Alberta. So they didn't have a choice but to kind of back off on that policy because there is such a acute shortness of nursing, general support staff in our healthcare system right now. And it is really putting a real damper on our ability to provide proper healthcare for Albertans.
That is such a shame to hear that. Just curious, Bonnie, do you know how many of your members have filed grievances for this, or how many have been put on unpaid leave because of the vaccine mandate? Do you know off the top of your head?
We have to go by Alberta Health Services numbers that they've provided us, and the number they've provided us is about 1,400 over all healthcare workers. If we break that down, AUPE membership basically accounts for about 55-60% of those. So you kind of have to do the math in your head, and so it'd probably be around 700 members. How many of those have returned back? Again, we don't have those figures because that is something we really rely on these employers to provide for us, and we've yet to see those numbers. But yeah, we're hoping that we'll have something from them sooner or later. And at the end, again, all of our members want to work. They went into this field, especially healthcare, to provide a service. And, when they were placed on basically an administrative leave without pay, they're not able to do what they really have a calling to do, which is healthcare. And it doesn't matter whether you're in nursing or whether you're a support staff, which I think are the backbone of hospital care. Um, our members want to work at the end of the day, and that's where we want our members to be. And hopefully, we can come to a point where all of them get back to work.
There have been approximately 4 unions in Canada that declared that a vaccine should be a personal decision and left out of the workplace.
Again, our labor relations do definitely take a look at the impact of those types of decisions. Alberta has already got some jurisprudence on those types of, again, the ability for the employer to place a condition of employment on the employee. And we've basically taken a stand that we believe it's in the best interest of our membership to be vaccinated. But again, it is their personal choice. So we aren't arguing about our members' ability to make a choice to be vaccinated or not. It's how the mandate of the employer affects them in a labor relations standpoint. So again, our members, we're not telling our members, yeah, you have to go out and be vaccinated. The employer is not telling their members that they have to go out and be vaccinated. But at the end of the day, we have to mitigate the choice that they make. And if they choose to be unvaccinated and choose to file a grievance against their employer because they feel that their right under a collective agreement or again under legislation has been violated, we will defend that decision, and we have an obligation to defend that decision.
Up next, National Post correspondent Tyler Dawson discusses tackling Alberta's drug crisis by setting up a joint provincial party committee to search for a path forward. Stay with us. Up next, National Post correspondent and our legislative reporter Tyler Dawson chats with Hal Roberts about the challenge of tackling the drug crisis in Alberta's towns and cities.
Tyler, a UCP and NDP committee is studying the idea of a safe drug supply. How would that work? First of all, the fact that they're working together, that's a miracle in itself.
Well, it's very interesting that they're doing this because, I'd had some conversations with some UCP people who are sort of adamantly opposed to this idea. And it basically works like this. The idea is that people are dying from drug overdoses, not necessarily because they're using drugs, but because the drugs they are using are toxic or are far more potent than they expected, things like that. So that's part of the logic behind a supervised injection site. If they overdose on this unexpectedly powerful drug, someone can be there to help them. So the safe drug supply essentially would be distributing safe quantities of heroin, for example, to users that they know is less likely to kill them. So this committee is studying the idea, and there's obviously major ideological divides on this. The New Democrats favoring things like supervised injection sites. The UCP has been more conservative on drug issues in the province, and it sort of kicked off on Tuesday, I think it was, with this strange debate. They wanted to have this they brought forward this motion that said they were going to remember before each meeting, all the people who died of drug poisoning, and the UCP said, "Oh no, we want to talk about all the people who died of drug addiction." There's back and forth ideologically between the two camps, and I think they agreed in the end to say both. But it does sort of show with this little spat that there is this pretty substantial ideological and political divide on how to approach this issue. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what they come back with, I think.
The Alberta Court of Appeal will hear a case regarding ID at supervised injection sites, Tyler. The UCP put rules in place that users need to present their identification and a health card to use the sites, but opponents say, you know what, many drug users simply don't have ID.
That's right. So the debate is sort of whether or not this is, as the UCP says, a way to connect them with better resources, more healthcare, or as the sort of New Democrats would say, whether this is going to restrict access. So there's a couple groups that had gone to a lower court to get an injunction to delay the implementation of this. It goes into effect January 31st. They lost actually at the lower court, and they've since appealed it. Normally, these things take quite a while to get from a lower court to a higher court, but the Court of Appeal is sort of rushing this urgently, so it will hear this case on January 27th, I believe it is, on whether or not this rule can come into effect like 4 days later.
Now, we've chatted in the past about separatist parties and whether or not they're going to make a splash. Tyler, there's another one now. It's called Alberta Statehood Party. What do we know about these guys?
Yeah, so it's led by a guy named Glenn Carrott, who people might remember him as one of the main organizers behind the United We Roll convoy that went to Ottawa in 2019, I think it was, protesting oil and gas policy that the federal government had brought in. And so since then, he's sort of been around in sort of right-wing political circles. He was involved with a lot of those other protests around the time. He's been a very, very vocal anti-COVID policy critic, I would say. And he also had a failed run to be the mayor of Innisfail. So sort of circulating in central Alberta politics for a period of time. And he's now the leader of this party. And its objective basically is that Alberta should separate and join the United States. So not necessarily an independence party, but we should become an American state, which of course is an idea that's circulated for a long, long time. Yeah, there's another player, I guess, on the right in Alberta.
Wow. Alberta becoming the 51st state. Not sure if I would buy into that. Tyler, the province is looking into controversial changes that would make it more difficult to fight traffic tickets. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, very interesting policy. Very interesting policy in the wake of Casey Madu getting a distracted driving ticket, I'd have to say. And the way it would basically work is you won't be able to go to traffic court for a ticket. You'll have like 7 days or something like that to decide whether or not you're going to fight the ticket. There's a fee associated with this, and it will be done either over the phone or online with an adjudicator. So critics are saying, well, this is a end run around due process. Why should people not be able to go to court to fight these things? Saying that it's going to prevent people from fighting tickets that they think were unjust. And the other thing that's come up in a couple of the news reports is there's a lot of small businesses sort of dedicated to helping people fight these traffic tickets. A lot of former and retired police officers, for example, run these businesses, saying that this is really going to cause problems for their business model. So very strange policy and sort of done quite quietly.
When we return from the break, we will share our top local stories from this last week. And don't forget to follow Bridge City News on Twitter. And if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for all of our latest videos. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Dead ducks have been discovered around Henderson Lake. Many of the deceased waterfowl have been mallards, and city staff says the deaths are more frequent in the wintertime. Corrine Putman with the Helen Schuler Nature Center says the deaths are often caused by a change in the ice and the birds getting trapped under the lake.
At Henderson, we do have kind of variable ice conditions. And so as the ice expands and the open water shrinks, one of the things that happens is that the waterfowl that are utilizing Henderson Lake, there's just less open water for them to sort of share.
When the deceased birds are found, they are bagged and taken to the landfill. The city says some of the birds are being sent to Calgary for testing to see if they were malnourished. City officials are also asking residents to not feed the birds. The City of Lethbridge is seeking public feedback on the ways in which Blackfoot and other Indigenous peoples are reflected in public spaces, including the naming of roads, parks, or city facilities or areas. City Council requested an audit of public space names last summer following the announcements and discoveries of unmarked mass graves at the sites of former Indian residential schools.
We have hired, working directly with the Blackfoot Confederacy Nations through elders and consultants and youth to understand their perspectives on existing named places throughout the community, and are also working to do broader public engagement to understand the perspectives of residents and visitors to Lethbridge on how they, understand the impact and level of inclusion of existing named places throughout the city.
You're invited to give your feedback by completing a survey at getinvolvedlethbridge.ca. It's open until February the 28th, and the findings will be combined with the feedback that has been sought directly from Indigenous community members. The Lethbridge Hurricanes have made 2 new acquisitions to their team. With these new changes, there have been 8 trades the club has made since November of last year. As Micah Quinn explains, staff for the organization say these new moves are vital for the team as they push toward a playoff position.
The Lethbridge Hurricanes have received forward Braden Edwards, along with a second-round draft pick in 2025 and a fourth-round pick in 2023 from the Winnipeg Ice. In exchange, the Ice get forward Chase Wheatcroft and a fifth-round pick in 2022. The Hurricanes also traded forward Logan Barlagi and a fourth-round pick in 2022 to the Medicine Hat Tigers. In exchange, the Canes received forward Corson Hopwo.
Hopwo is a veteran in this league. It's kind of weird in a sense to make a deal with the Medicine Hat Tigers and have a Tiger come into our lineup, but he's a Hurricane now, and that's what it is, and he's a good player, and we like what he brings, and we're excited about what he can bring to our lineup.
Hopwo played 25 games with the Medicine Hat Tigers in the 2021-2022 season, notching 8 goals and tallying 8 assists. He says he's excited to start a new chapter with the Hurricanes.
I'm super excited to kind of strive and help the team get a playoff spot here, so I think it's an exciting time, and I think we're going to do well.
The Canes are currently 10th in the WHL Eastern Conference with 14 wins, 14 losses, and 2 overtime losses. The club will battle the Red Deer Rebels on Friday night at 7 p.m. at the NMAX Center. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Thank you, Micah. The city of Lethbridge continues to grow with the construction of the new agri-food hub and trade center. The project's budget is over $70 million and is generating between 500 and 600 jobs. The CEO of the Lethbridge and District Exhibition, Mike Workington, gave us an exclusive update earlier this week.
We continue to monitor the ongoing COVID-19 risks that everybody has seen that have impacted supply chain, as well as some of the manufacturing elements that are coming out of Asia. But as of right now, we are on track to meet that 70.6 budget, and that is for the building itself and the immediate surrounding area. Significant boost to the local economy and the visitor economy. And then lastly, our focus really on generating this is generating new visits to southern Alberta to showcase the natural resources and the economy that already exists here, so that we can continue a cycle of driving increased economic impact to the community.
The new center is expected to be finished by May of 2023. There will be more Bridge City News when we come back after the break. If you want to see extended versions of the interviews you've seen today, head on over to bridgecitynews.ca. Come back after the break when we talk about the work to curb the number of automobile accidents among new drivers. Thanks for watching Bridge City News this weekend.
But even in the Highway Traffic Act and Motor Vehicles Act, it does say that even the snow blowing off your vehicle, if it causes a collision with other drivers, you can be fined.